These days, sourdough is everywhere. Bakeries all over are offering it. On sandwiches, in take-home loaves, you name it. It seems that we've caught up to the rest of the world. But our love for bread doesn't start there, and that's what we will go over in this video. We have a long tradition of baked goods in the Philippines, and some might even surprise you. But first, let's check in on Goods from Scratch in Makati, known for its naturally leavened breads and sourdough-focused menu. They sell out every weekend.
It actually started way back 2020. I moved back to the province, which is in Quezon, Lucena. I was looking for sourdough because I used to buy here in Manila when I used to live here. I couldn't find any, no one was selling. So I just started making. I bought books, I watched YouTube videos, and then I tried to learn how to start a starter and then eventually bake a bread out of it. From there, I was just posting on Instagram, and then people would ask me, "Hey Ralph, are you selling that?" It was pandemic, so I didn't have anything else to do. So I was like, yeah, I'm selling it, but I really wasn't. And that's how it started. And then eventually, I ended up building the brand Scratch. Yeah, it was a no-brainer for me to use the word Scratch as our brand. I make everything from scratch. I used to sell fresh pasta from scratch, cakes, whatever, so I make everything. And then we were batchmates in college. She found it on Instagram also. She would buy from me.
So I'll find ways to ship the breads from Lucena to Manila.
She just messaged me randomly. I was supposed to go back to Manila for work. But then she was like, okay, when you move back to Manila, let's just open a bakery. And then I was like, okay, as long as you handle the back end part, because I don't like paperwork. And then she agreed. So now we're here.
Yeah.
I wanted a commissary to supply restaurants, to supply cafes. I just wanted to share what I think a good bread is. That's the whole business model before us, like a B2B concept.
Yeah.
The space was kind of big enough to have 6 seats. That's what I had in mind. Maybe they can eat here. Maybe they can enjoy the bread how we like to eat the bread. It just literally snowballed to a full-blown restaurant every weekend. Mondays to Fridays, we're still a commissary, so we do supply restaurants, cafes, and then we have online orders. And then Saturdays and Sundays, we ended up being a brunch spot.
Yeah.
The menu is designed based on how we like to enjoy our bread. So there's no specific cuisine. Growing up eating Spanish bread from a local bakery for sure had an influence to my love for bread. Maybe that's why we also make sweeter breads. So I guess the play on sweet with bread is a very Filipino culture that we ended up having here in Scratch. The pretzels sometimes would sell out first. We serve it as a sandwich and on its own with a burnt honey cream. You can either get it savory or sweet. A lot of people like the mortadella sandwich. It's easy to eat and then it fills you up. So the French toast, a lot of people like that as well. They say it's not too sweet. They like that.
Hummus toast, it's our vegan option. So a lot of people opt for it if they want something lighter.
So it's fried sourdough with hummus, and then we top it with roasted eggplant, roasted mushroom, and then it's served with pickled onions for acidity. It's pretty good. I wasn't expecting for people to come because I thought sourdough is not part of a Filipino diet. I guess right now we're more open to trying out new things and not just sticking to what we usually eat. I'm happy also and grateful that a lot of people are interested in what we do. I'm very much looking into using local produce, local ingredients to incorporate it with the style that we use. So non-traditional, but with a touch of Filipino for sure, to support the local farmers, the whole F&B ecosystem as well. Growing up in Lucena, in Quezon, I guess we're a coconut capital. So maybe using something from where I grew up in, let's say coconut, turn it into a jam, and maybe even pan de coco, but our style. Well, I guess in the next few years, I don't want it to have multiple branches. We're pretty hands-on kasi, so if we expand quickly, it'll lose the essence and the charm of the space. Maybe we'll expand our B2B community, so we want to supply more cafes. So it all boils down to sharing what we think a good bread is.
With sourdoughs flying off the shelf from bakeries like Scratch, it makes one curious. Why and how is this kind of bread popular in the Philippines? We are a rice nation, right? So how does bread fit in our food culture, and what are the stories that shaped it? According to Jenny Aurelios, co-author of the book Panaderia, our ancestors derived starch from root crops which they formed into an earlier version of bread. An example of this would be the sago bread recorded by the English navigator William Dampier. This was eaten in some communities in Mindanao as one of our pre-colonial breads. A 1697 account of Dampier talks about the palm starch from Maguindanao. To quote him, "Of these trees, sago is made, which the poor country people eat instead of bread 3 to 4 months in the year." While racist, yes, we actually once documented landang, or sago palm, in Siquijor.
Kuha na siya kanang lihi aron daghan siyang unod ba? Saksak. Itlog. Wala tayong type na. Bakit ni ano? Wala din ang tagas para isi. Dito ang dahil sila kay na si asa naman ito isa hipon ka. Ako ka ito doon. Balaligi, magagama pa minsan lang siya. Plastic na mo nita. Magadula. Magkagod paglubi. Magkasagol pa.
Yan. Ito mga na yung dapit.
Dami na unom siya doon. Sampo.
Piling na kamu pa na.
Mga unta ninyong palagsing.
Could the British explorer be talking about the same thing? Since we didn't have the concept of kakanin yet, could these early suman-like palm starch cakes have been categorized as bread? I mean, it does make sense. Before being a rice-eating nation, we ate mostly root crops or starches from trees. Since we don't grow wheat in the Philippines, it was brought in by the Spanish, primarily intended for the production of the sacramental hostia for the Holy Mass. And where did they source the wheat flour, you may ask? The Chinese merchants. Aurelios also notes that Filipinos were not the first consumer of these breads, but the growing Spanish community. According to historical records, the first panaderia was established by the Spaniards in 1625 in Intramuros, Manila. Its main purpose, obviously, was to supply the breads and communion hostia needed for masses and for the community, particularly the Philippine Governor General Fernando de Silva. It was managed by a Spaniard, while the bakers were Chinese immigrants. It's hard to say what the very first Filipino bread was, but some accounts suggest the Spanish tried to recreate a French-style baguette, and that attempt turned into pan de suelo, literally translating to floor bread, as it was baked right on the oven floor. We actually have Pandesuelo right here, and if you compare it to a Pandesal, you can tell it's very different. One, very soft, the other, very hard. So it is actually my first time to try this. It's very chewy and tough. Today, Kamaning Bakery in QC actually still sells it. This bread was firm and crusty, made with strong wheat flour, natural leavening, and high heat, and early Filipino bakeries quickly picked up this style. One more thing to consider. Local ingredients forced adaptation. The Philippines didn't have its own wheat supply, and imported flour was both expensive and inconsistent. So to adapt, bakers switched to cheaper, weaker flour and added fats like coconut oil. That change created a softer crumb and a lighter crust, and over time, the bread lost the hardness and chew that defined the traditional pan de suelo. Sweetness was also increased. While Spanish breads were mostly savory, Filipino bakers began adding sugar to offset the weak flour. And because people simply preferred it, that added sweetness eventually became a defining trait of a pandesal. Historically, tuba had long been used in rituals and everyday consumption, but its role as a natural leavening agent only emerged during the Spanish period as a substitute for yeast. Working like a sourdough-style starter, it produced breads with a noticeably crustier texture throughout the colonial era, like in the still-made pan Bisaya that we featured in Siquijor.
While there are several variations across the Visayas, Pan Bisaya is collectively considered as heritage food. Unlike typical breads that use yeast as a leavening agent, it relies on tuba, a fermented drink from coconut sap. Pan Bisaya is quite common in Siquijor, sold in streets, public markets, and even cockpits. But one particular version of it, and perhaps the most famous one, is baked and sold by the beach, made by a woman whose story is as rich and heartwarming as her breads and pastries.
Ako si Lilibet Magsayo Vernis. Ako ang may-ari ng Lilibet Pan Bisaya. Nagsimula tong Lilibet Pan Bisaya October 20, 2012. Ang Pan Bisaya, ma'am, nagkaiba siya sa bakery. Kasi ang bakery, wala siyang tuba. Tapos, yung sa Pan Bisaya, mano-mano lang ang ginawa ko. Walang machine. Tapos, horno, hindi oven. Apoy namin, makita niyo. Panggatong ang namin ginamit. Auntie ko, sa Maria, nagluto siya ng panbisaya at saka torta. Pag may bisita siya, pinuntahan ako dito kasi yung tinapay ko at saka torta, yan ang i-present niya sa bisita niya kasi native yan. Sabi niya, ito ang i-present ko dahil kay Bisaya.
When her children were younger, Lilibeth and her husband struggled to make ends meet. Lilibeth tried different jobs until she observed her neighbor making pan Bisaya and had a eureka moment.
Sabi ko, magluto na lang ako ng pan Bisaya. Tapos, nag-isip ko na paano ko to magawa ang pan Bisaya. Una-una, nag-start ko ng 3 kilos. Brown sugar. Then, iodize. Then, margarine. Oil po. Then, kamay na. Then, milk. Tapos, vanilla. Tapos, coconut wine, tuba. Lambot ang iyang, ma'am, result sa pan. Hindi siya tumitigas. Then water. Dati ako lang isa. Kasama kong mga anak ko na 2 magtulong sa akin. Pero ngayon, 7 na kami. 7 lahat na ang tumulong sa akin. Ang pangarap ko, ma'am, na tuloy-tuloy yun mi hanggang kailan mi kunin ni Lord.
When the Americans took over, they gradually pushed out the use of tuba by introducing commercial yeast, cheaper wheat flour, and modern baking methods. They also brought in baking powder, canned dairy, and new equipment like metal pans. Together, these shifts transformed the traditional crusty pan de suelo into the softer, lighter, and often sweeter pandesal we know today. These same influences also explain why cakes began appearing in corner shops and why breads and cakes became such everyday staples in the Filipino diet. Talking about the American influence on food, this book called Taste of Control by Rene Alexander de Orquiza Jr. is a must-read if any of you are really into Filipino foodways. What Rene talks about is how food played a major role in terms of colonizing our taste buds and colonizing our culture. And I'll read you a couple of excerpts that are wild and so racist. Freer, who was an educator in the province, said, "Eating boiled rice in place of bread, often 3 times a day as the natives do, embracing rice as a staple item was a revelation for those Americans who adjusted to eating in the tropics. A dish of steaming hot rice, cooked well but dry, was a most appetizing odor." So Freer actually enjoyed the rice. But when the Americans first arrived, they started kind of missing the foods that they had at home. So they started investing money in importing goods, but not only importing goods, creating cookbooks that would just sell a Western ideal of what good cooking should look like. One of the most important investments in Filipino education at that point was home sciences. So basically cooking, baking, and everything. As Miller noted to the popularity of baked goods around the country, cakes and donuts particularly were everywhere. "They have achieved an almost complete invasion," he wrote. "No home is without them." Their rapid popularity was directly related to the spread of domestic science, and Miller loved how schoolgirls were using their cooking skills to make money around the country. In the market, you may purchase donuts a la Americana from a woman who learned the art from her schoolgirl daughter. So what does that all say? It says through the proliferation of localized American cookbooks, through advertisements that were telling us to buy white bread or milk, all the ingredients were made with white ingredients and Western ingredients inside of them. It shows you how food played an important role in terms of colonizing our culture. And bread is one of those lasting remnants in that very, very controversial history. In our work, we've come across a few heritage bakeries run by multi-generational families. These traditional panaderias have served as landmarks and cultural markers in the community, becoming a social hub and often serving as an early morning meeting place and news centers for locals, besides being a source of livelihood for the owners and their staff. One of the most memorable ones was the 81-year-old Tayabas Bakery, which has been part of the community since 1944.
Ako ay si Pablito Casino. Nagmamayari nitong bakery, bagaman at ito ay naisaling ko na doon sa aking 4 na anak.
Ito yung para umalis ang tinapay. Yung lumaki.
Nagsimula ito talaga ay doon pa sa aking magulang. Ayon sa kwento nila sa akin, 1944 nung magsimulang magtinapay yung aking ama. Sa kanya yung mga recipe, pero ang kanyang panimula na tinapay ay talagang pandesal at bonete. Noong una ay si tatay ang panadero, yung nanay ko, siya naman ang nakatao sa tindahan. At katulong din kaming mga anak sa pagbebenta kahit maliliit pa kami noon. Years old pa lang ako, nakikita ko na kung ano yung mga ginagawa dito. Ahon na. At ako ay nakakatulong ng aking ama sa paghahanay-hanay. At kahit nung ako ay nasa high school na, ay ako ay katulong na niya doon sa paggawa talaga ng tinapay. Kaya nalalaman ko yung mga recipe at saka kung anumang estilo na kailangan gawin doon sa paggawa ng tinapay. Nagsimula na talagang pamilya lang. Noon lang na dumating na ang panahon na hindi na kaya namin na kinakailangan talaga na mag-hire na ng mga makakatulong, ay saka pa lang kami kumuha ng mga makakatulong. Yung bonete ay tinapay din na pang-umaga, kaya lang ang lasa nito ay mas matamis kaysa doon sa pandesal.
Nilalagyan namin ng takaan para purmang bonete talaga.
At saka ang hitsura nito ay parang kampana, bell shape siya. Yun ang pagkakaiba niya doon sa pandesal.
Ito, ahonin na. Ito nga ay kapag kinakain,
Hindi na ito nilalagyan ng palaman dahil meron na itong sariling lasa. Kinakain ng yun lang, maaaring ang kaulam lang ay kape o tsokolate, ayos na.
Yung pandesal namin ay niluluto natin sa pugon. Kasi karamihan, yun ang gusto ng tao. Ayon sa panlasa, experience sila, iba daw yung, iba yung panlasa nila pag sa pugon niluluto.
Yung kung ano mo yung napasimula nung tatay ko, yung recipe yun ay patuloy namin na sinusunod. Pinupulsuhan namin yung kagustuhan ng mga mamimili. Kung nagugustuhan nila yung lasang yon, ay walang dahilan para amin baguhin. Kaya yun pa rin ang aming ginagamit na recipe.
Ang pagluluto dito ay dalawang shift. Merong sa gabi, merong sa umaga. Sa gabi, ginagawa natin ang bonete, pandesal, tsaka monay. Sa umaga naman, ang kanilang niluluto ay tasty, monay din, kalihim, pandikoko, Spanish, at ilang mga biskwit tulad ng Romano, Badatison, Brojas, Pandipasas, o tap. Meron tayo nun.
Ang pangarap ko sa Tayabas Bakery at sana yun din ang maging pangarap ng aking mga anak. Huwag mawala dito sa bayan ng Tayabas yung pagkakataon na makapag-serbisyo sa mga Tayabasin sa pamamagitan ng pagbibigay sa kanila ng maayos na pagkain sa umaga at sa pang-araw-araw na rin. Na sana'y tuloy-tuloy na sa kahit sa mga susunod pang henerasyon nila.
Now, if you pay attention to your surroundings, there's at least one local bakery, whether heritage or a newer one, in every neighborhood. In South Caloocan, there's a 59-year-old Apolinar Bakery. In Malolos, there's Eurobake, a known pasalubong stop in Bulacan that traces its roots to its predecessor, Panaderia La Concepcion, in 1945. In Poblacion, Makati, Insular Bakery has been an endeared part of the community since 1924.
Insular Bakery, it's the original bakery in Poblacion. We've baking for you guys since 1924 up to now.
Insular Bakery is a landmark in Poblacion. Everyone describes Poblacion Insular, because they all grew up here. Probably from their childhood, they were buying here already. Even balikbayans would eventually come home here. So it became an iconic landmark for Poblacion. We stuck with traditional Filipino bakery products because we want to concentrate yung foundation talaga, which is the Pandesal, Pandebomba, Kababayan, the ordinary Ensaymada, Mamon Tostado. Those are the products that have been around for years already. And then, yung mga best sellers namin is lately, it's the bizcocho. Everyone likes the bizcocho.
One must visit Insular Bakery. It's the oldest existing bakery in Makati. That's really where we bought our bread. I especially love their kababayan. And Pandebomba, that's very sikat.
Insular Bakery started with my grandfather, Mario Figueroa. He was a baker in Santa Ana Bakery from early 1900s, 1920s. And then he started wanting to have his own bakery in Makati. So he started here in 1924. But not in this location. It was
across the river, Mandaluyong.
And then he transferred to Makati and it started as a small bakery. And then eventually, my parents took over. So it was my parents who mechanized it, improved the structure, and developed it. And then by the 1960s, became a family corporation. We were all born here. We used to have a house on the 4th floor. So there was a house and the bakery downstairs. That's where we grew up until 1980. So we had to pass through the bakery in order to go to our house. And we're supposed to help, either packaging, either doing cashier. We grew up working at the same time, looking over production. We were friends with all our bakers and everything. So it was really part of our family and part of our growing up.
About an hour and a half drive from Poblacion, the family-run Bagong Pagasa Bakery in Quezon City has been serving their pandesal and iconic Ensaymada since the 70s.
Bagong Pagasa Bakery kasi by the name, Bagong Pagasa. This is Barangay Bagong Pagasa kasi. So this is where the bakery is situated. During the early years, ang design talaga niya is a community bakery. So eventually, nagkaroon siya ng mga customers from different areas, different barangays within Quezon City. Father ko kasi medyo conservative siya on how the store looks.
It just to remind me that I start from a humble beginning. From the very beginning, Bagong Pagasa is a small hot pandesal and sari-sari store. And at that time, my dad is already very sick. My parents asked me if you could resign from my job and take care of the bakery. 1977 is we moved to Bagong Pagasa. And this is really a peaceful place. Walang tao. So it's a little bit boring. You will be waiting for somebody who gonna buy your product. You just cannot wait for the customer to come. So I put some bread on my car and you go around the Project 6 area. Mag-aalok ka and try to sell your product. It's challenging. It's always on a survival mode. So when my dad passed away, there is still one brother and one youngest sister who's still studying. So talagang pupukan niya. But at least I survived.
When I was growing up, father ko, syempre, dinidiscipline din ako. So sinasabi niya, tumulong ka dito, tumulong ka dyan. Nag-start yun, patulong-tulong. Tapos eventually, every Christmas yun, nandito ako, tumutulong. Tapos eventually, nagbibilang-bilang, nag-inventory ng bread, tapos sometimes nagbibilang ng sales. Hanggang sa minsan, hindi ko na nare-realize na gumagawa ka na pala ng trabaho na pang isang tao.
So here comes my son who told me, Pa, maybe I want to join you. No. This is something that is very hard. It's 24/7. You don't have day off. No, I have to. You're not getting any more younger. So he volunteered.
From its humble beginnings as a small neighborhood bakery, Bagong Pagasa Bakery has grown into a thriving business, now operating a commissary that produces a wide variety of Filipino breads loved by many. Behind this journey is Mark Lau, the manager who oversees the bakery's daily operations. With his commitment to quality and passion for preserving Bagong Pag-asa standards, Mark has helped transform Bagong Pag-asa into a household name.
Our store opens 5 a.m. up until 6 p.m. But our operations are 24 hours. So we do that to make sure that the customers get the freshest bread they can. So hindi kami gumagawa ng too much in one shift. We try to manage yung inventory.
Before kasi, when my lolo acquired this area, ang bread business kasi or ang takbo kasi ng economy nun is medyo mahirap eh. If you have products, usually ang products mo nasa needs yan. So loaf, pandesal, monay.
In terms of operations, we try to maintain the old way of doing bread. So we still ferment. So we've acquired equipment to help with the efficiencies kasi usually yung bread today, we try to make it shorter, faster, but we try not to sacrifice yung old way of doing bread. So we still try to make it the way it was done before, but faster.
Yung father ko eventually nag-i-innovate din siya. Pandesal kasi has a shelf life of 1 day. Maganda na if 2 days.
Kasi ang hot pandesal, yung challenges niya would be keeping it hot. So ang pandelito, that was our answer to the hot pandesal.
Hindi siya yung lulutuin mainit, siniserve. So it's already packed. And pag uwi mo sa bahay, you can heat it sa pan mo or sa toaster.
It would last up until the end of the shelf life. So up until the 8th day, it will be soft. Yun yung core na product namin na highest volume. Ayan, inaalagaan namin yun, yung quality niyan.
The best-selling item in it go places is the ubimada. Nobody has it before when we first introduced it.
If there's one product na constantly kinakain ko pa rin up to today, and that would be ubimada. Yung ubimada, it's an ensaymada with the ubi filling inside. Meron siyang margarine and meron siyang sugar. So it's a very simple product, and yet pag kinakain mo siya, parang it makes you feel happy. Siguro dahil matamis siya. May bibigyan ako ng friends or may bibigyan ako, I want to build a relationship. Ubimada is a good way to start. So, ubimada kasi malaki yan eh. So, hinahati-hati namin sa school yan. Marami kami nag-share dyan. Kasi mahirap din ubusin isang piraso eh.
In our interview with Jenny Aurelios, she talks further about the beloved pandesal and why it's deeply linked to us being Filipinos.
Pandesal became our iconic bread because during our research for our book Panaderia, all over the country, the only bread that is common among all the bakeries from Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao is the pandesal. It symbolizes our identity as Filipinos. It is brown, it is a little bit crusty, and in its presence in our table is very strong then and now. The Panaderia is actually our way of chronicling our taste preferences. The Panaderia will reflect what is being consumed during its time. So for example, you have Spanish-era breads during the Spanish colonial periods. Now you have ube pandesal, you have all of these interesting other types of breads. They reflect the periods wherein they were made. Another example is how we name our breads. If you're young and you would probably not remember the breads that are called Sputnik, Pandenora, or Elorde. Those are Monay type of breads. So those kinds of breads, they are historical markers. They are historical chroniclers of our time.
When Filipinos married acquired baking knowledge and their own taste preferences, it gave birth to indigenized bakes, like Hopia.
If there's a list of ubiquitous Filipino snacks, Hopia would most probably be in it. Hopia, which means good pastry in Hokkien, is a flaky pastry resembling a mooncake with sweet or savory filling. According to Filipino food historian Feliz Prudente Santa Maria, Hopia has been noted in the 1868 textbook Vademecum Filipino by Venancio Maria de Abella as an integral part of Filipino cuisine, alongside other sweets like balikocha, tira-tira, and palitaw since the 19th century. While the hopia that we know now traces its origins in China, Filipinos have adapted the recipe to our palate, making it uniquely our own, much like many other dishes that we borrowed from our foreign neighbors and colonizers. Today, hopia is enjoyed all over the country, but most especially in Taguig, where it has been designated as the town's flagship product. Belen Flores, lovingly called Inang, is the 94-year-old matriarch behind the original Tipas Bakery in Taguig. As one of its oldest makers, she has dedicated her life to ensuring Tipas Hopia will be enjoyed by generations to come. This is the story of Tipas Hopia as much as it is Inang's, told from the perspective of 3 generations of the Flores family, a journey wrapped in selflessness, fortitude, and a love like no other.
Parang it's going to be a byword na walang Pilipino na hindi nakakakilala ng Tipas Hopia. Yung recipe since 1987 to 2024, paki-compute na. Pero talagang yung number 1 na sinasabi nila is yung feeling hindi masyadong matamis, tapos yung crust is flaky siya.
Finormulate namin, in-improve namin siya.
Now, after the soft flour, we add the hard flour. This is for ube. This is the crust for the munggo. Ito na yung consistency niya. Medyo pino na siya. Minimix lang siya ng flour para ma-achieve natin yung smoothness ng kanyang crust. Pag sinabing Tipas Hopia, masarap yan. Alam mo na yung amoy. So pag kinain mo, talagang sinesend na ng brain mo na masarap. Kaya talagang masarap siya. The crust will be formed into a ball. This the saw, the another mixture will be incorporated with the ball. And then after that, it will go the process of the rolling pin. That will create the flakiness of the hopia. Then after that, lalagay siya dyan. Tapos yung filling naman nandito. Nakikita ninyo na yung filling at saka yung crust, nagsasama na siya dito sa machine. Diretso na siya dito. Kinakat na siya in small balls. So, eto na siya. Kasi way of living na rin ng mga kapwa natin Pinoy. We sell our hopia at a very low price kasi kailangan isipin din namin yung mga consumers namin. Hindi naman lahat mayaman. Di ba mahirap ang buhay? So ang iba, isang box ng hopia, isang pamilya busog na. Di ba?
Nakakatawid gutom talaga siya. Like everyone has their own hopia story back when they were in college.
Yung 10 pieces ng hopia, busog ka na. Tubig na lang ang kailangan.
Talagang masarap. Hindi ko ako ang may-ari. Pero hindi. Hindi ako nagkasawa.
Now, of course, who would dare miss the classic Ensaymada?
Soft, pillowy, sweet,
buttery, and strings of cheese falling willfully down your chin. There is no greater pleasure than eating a freshly baked ensaymada. There are several theories regarding its true origins, and one traces it back to the Arabs, who were inhabitants of Majorca as early as 1109. Supporting this claim is the Arab word samin, which purportedly influenced the Majorcan word saim in Ensaymada. Another theory points to the Majorcan ensaymada's Jewish origins. It was said that a Jewish confectioner gave a pastry called bolima to King James I of Aragon, who conquered Majorca. Also spiral like the ensaymada, it was said to symbolize long life and represent the divine union of the divine and the human. The Philippine ensaymadas that we know today originated from Majorca, Spain. Originally spelled ensaymada with an I, it was derived from the Majorcan word same, which stood for pork lard, a key ingredient of the supposed original ensaymada. Back in the 17th century, the ensaymada was a celebratory pastry due to the tedious process behind it, made of strong flour, water, sugar, eggs, mother dough, pork lard, and sugar. The Majorcan version is more bready and hardly as rich as the ensaymada that one would commonly find in Filipino bakeries. This is why our interest was piqued when we found a bakery that makes it closer to the traditional Majorcan way, but marries it with that unmistakable Filipino flavor we all grew up with. The owner's story, as we will soon discover, is layered and just as rich.
Ako si Antonio Baloy, ang nagsimula ng Baloy's Bake Shop, home of the Ensaymada de Cavite. Kasi I was an OFW, meron kami kasing biyahe, pag Mediterranean cruise, nakita ko tuwing nabalik yung aming mga pasahero, may bit-bit silang mga ensaymada na I got curious, I bought some and tasted some na realize ko, hindi pala original ang ensaymadang Filipino bread. It was brought by the Spanish. Yung original ensaymada de Mallorca kasi, it is meant to be shared. And the way they swirl it, para lang inarrange nila ng paikot, hindi siya binubuhol. Bumili ako ng mga libro, I ordered Fundamentals of Baking, pero nag-umpisa sa maliit na, wala pang 4 square meter na bakery na made of plywood. Hindi pa siya malakas, naisip ko, gawan siya ng packaging. Nakita ko nga sa Pamal de Mallorca, yung original na ensaymada is served on an octagon box na gantong kataas. And I remember my mom, sabi niya pa sa akin, bakit magkakahon ka? Isipin mo 45,000 yung kahon. Wala akong makitang regalo pag pupunta ako kay Mrs. Baliches. May bibisita sa akin galing friend sa barko. Wala akong maipuuwi, something that I can call my own. Tapos, andyan yung Cavite na word. So, if you're going to Manila, you're going to Bulacan, you have something that you can be proud of. Ito yung production area, tapos yung finishing area tawag namin. So, dalawang team. Isang production team, tapos isang finishing team. Dito namin, bali, ginagawa. I'm so thankful kay God, napakabuti niya. Kasi itong machines na to, 40 years old na mahigit. Pero it's been with us mga 10 to 12 years, no? We only use machine to incorporate all the ingredients. The rest is being made by hand. So pagkatapos niyan, dilipat niya yan from figura, we call it figura, yung i-divide siya into portions to sa desired naming weight. Ipa-flatten siya. Then, ito yung sikreto, yung margarine. Bali, yan yung nagpapalambot. That makes the difference. Yun ang nagpa-distinct sa ensaymada namin sa mostly karamihan. Every sequence or stage na ginagawa namin, nagre-rest siya ng konting minuto. Hindi na pupuwersa yung dough. We have 6 flavors. Classic, we have the ube, we have Bavarian, dulce de leche, makapuno, and then yung latest naming flavor is yung coco jam. Assuming naka-rest na siya ng maayos sa proofing boxes, yan na yung twirl na part. Nakaka-produce kami ng 800 to 1,000, sometimes a little over, every day. Si Romel ngayon, yung aming head hornero, sa sala niya, papakita siya ngayon. By the way, yung oven na yan, kubo pa lang ang aming bakery, nasa amin na siya. Kaya ako talaga tumigil is, I was only 20 years old when I started as an OFW. Na-realize ko talaga na hindi rin kaya talaga ng pagiging worker doon yung magkaroon ako ng financial freedom. Naisip ko, if I will do something para ako kumita ng sarili at hindi umasa sa aking mga anak when I get 65, 70 years old, I have to do something now. Kung may gagawin din naman pala ako, dapat umpisahan ko na ng bata ako. Gusto kong maano na there is always an opportunity sa Pinas. Masyado lang tayong westernized. Bata ka pa, sinasabihan ka ng lolo mo, lola mo, even your parents na mag-aral ka mabuti so you can work abroad. They visit me once in a while, yung mga naiwan ko sa barko. Bibisit sila, paano mo nagawa yun? Ipagpalit yung 100,000 kinikita doon. Sabi ko, brother, kung bibilangin ko yung opportunity na kaya mong pasukin sa Pinas, kulang yung aking daliri sa kamay at sa paa. Wala kang bibilin sa Baloy's Bake Shop na tinapay na there is more than 24 hours. Kaya nga lagi siyang malambot, fresh, hindi siya matigas o hindi siya dried yung loob. Yung iba kasi cake textures, bubbly, airy, fluffy. Ito po, makikita mo yung strands ng fiber niya, tapos pag inamoy pa siya, maaalala mo talaga yung amoy ng classic na Panaderias. Which is ganun naman talaga ang Ensaymada na dinala ng Spanish from Palma de Mallorca sa Pilipinas. Tinweak lang namin ng konti kasi yung naandun wala siyang sugar, wala siyang cheese. Naisip namin na gawing solo size, tapos lagyan ng palaman at of course lagyan ng keso, which suits yung palate ng Filipino na sweet and salty. Ayun. Yung chew na sinasabi ko na nagmamarka yung ngipin mo sa kanya.
Ang ginagawa ng mga modern bakeries right now, yung the still respect the traditions and yet they insert their creativity, their skills, their modern take on the breads. I think what they're doing is very good because it ensures that our breads survive and at the same time, they remain relevant to who is eating it now. It's actually important to support local bakeries in order to keep them alive. So if no one buys the traditional breads, no one will make it. So in a way, the more we support our local Panaderias, the more we buy their breads, the better way of ensuring that the children of tomorrow, the consumers of tomorrow would still have the breads that we have today.
There are so many breads and pastries loved in every corner of the Philippines, but they will all point to one thing. Our breads say a lot about who we are. They've just never been about sustenance. They're about comfort, memories, and connection, passed down from oven to table, hand to hand. Every panaderia has its own rhythm, the soft hum of work, the warmth of fire, and the patience of rising dough. In the end, the story of our breads is really the story of us, ordinary people finding warmth in the simplest things and sharing it with those around us. Here's to hoping that our local panaderias, especially those that have stood the test of time, endure and keep making the classics. Because the day they disappear would be the day we lose a piece of who we are.